didn't include the kind of information you use suggesting. Like, what would be the problem if you said, we participated in 23 investigations, and 12 of them involved religious extremist organizations, 6 of them involved Unitarians, 4 Greek Orthodox, and 2 Russian Orthodox, and they were also 11 political extremists, and 6 of them were anarchist groups, and 5 of them were right-wing groups, and 11 of these were assessments, and 8 were preliminary investigations, and 3 were full investigations. What would be the problem with providing that kind of information?
That would be a very detailed amount of information that would allow people, because of the number of resources and the limited number of resources we have, I think people could then determine where those resources were being applied and potentially compromise sensitive investigations.
So how exactly? If we're just sort of those general categories, what would happen?
I think if I discuss that in council, it might actually provide information about how those investigations would be compromised.
Is it that if you gave the types and you weren't and somebody who wasn't involved in one of those types was doing terrorism and say, okay, I'm getting away with it? Or I mean, what is it? I mean, can you give some indication of why we compromise the investigations?
We have very limited resources applied to these investigations. We do very few investigations. And if you were to follow the track of the investigation through that process, you would be able to determine potentially what we were investigating or what the FBI was investigating.
What purpose do you think this report really serves much of a purpose?
It complies with the council resolution that allowed our participation on a case-by-case basis.
But, I mean, doesn't this in effect just sort of say, we're complying with the resolution? And, I mean, since there's an understanding, hopefully there's an understanding that you would comply with the resolution, so do you think there's really a point to having to come before us every year and say, we're still complying with the resolution?
That was council's direction, and I believe that there is an oversight component to it that the mayor and the city attorney can speak to as well, that they have knowledge of the investigations that we participate in and the oversight processes in place.
Well, can I also just add, I mean, the purpose of a public forum is also to allow advocates, advocacy groups, individual citizens, lawyers, legal advocacy, watchdog groups to come and tell us they have evidence that we have not been faithful to the resolution or to the and that is one reason to have a public forum.
But Commissioner Fish, could we have the public forum without having a report that seems like we'll just say the same thing every year?
Yeah.
Steve, I think the council walked a fine line. I mean, these are difficult questions. The chief has persuaded me we should not hear publicly about methods and means because of the limited participation. But I think this is fair game for the council to debate. I do think a public forum with people having a chance to express their misgivings about the original action, our implementation, and to provide direct and substantive evidence of any claim violation of this agreement is useful. I have, in the time I've been involved with this, no one has come before us in a public forum and said I have specific evidence of some misdeed. But I would think that under this resolution, but if they did so, I think they are entitled to have a forum where they can have.
Chief, by the way, I want to apologize to you and actually to Dave Dagke for not having asked these questions in advance of this discussion, and hope we'll have a discussion before next year on these topics, because I would like to have a further discussion about why you think any of those details would compromise investigations, and also Mr. Dagke as to why the ACLU thinks that this particular information may ask for would be useful.
And again, I think there's value in us coming before council with the report because